The conference room on the orbital station was filled with representatives from across the galaxy. Jake Morrison sat quietly in his chair, watching the holographic display that showed a planet spinning slowly in the center of the room. The planet looked angry even from space. Its surface was covered in red deserts, black mountains, and storms that never seemed to end. A tall alien stood up to speak. His name was Vecren, and he belonged to one of the oldest species in the Galactic Council. His voice was deep and serious as he began to explain why everyone was gathered here today. "This is Krivara 9, Vecren said, pointing at the rotating planet. "For 300 years, it has defeated every species that tried to land on it. We have lost thousands of lives trying to build a base there. The planet is marked in red on all our charts. Red means death. And," Jake leaned forward slightly. He was a human, and humans were still new to this galaxy. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 40 years ago. Most of the aliens in the room had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. But Jake was not intimidated. He had explored 17 planets before this one, and he had succeeded every time. Lisa Hayes sat next to Jake. She was his second in command and had been with him on most of his missions. She was looking at the data on her tablet, reading numbers that would scare most people. The temperature on Krivara 9 changed from burning hot to freezing cold in just a few hours. The gravity went up and down without warning. The air could eat through metal if you were not careful, and the animals that lived there were born to kill. Vecren continued his presentation. "The Krothans tried to build a base 5 years ago. They are strong creatures, much stronger than most of us here. They brought their best soldiers and their toughest equipment. They lasted 6 days before they had to leave. Half of them were injured. 3 died. Another alien spoke up. She was from a species that could survive in extreme cold. "My people attempted a landing 30 years ago. We thought our natural resistance to temperature would help us. We were wrong. The planet has too many dangers. It is not just the cold or the heat. Everything there wants to kill you." Jake listened carefully to every word. He did not interrupt. He wanted to hear all the warnings before he made his decision. His crew was waiting back on their ship, the UCS Horizon. They trusted him to make the right choice. He would not let them walk into certain death, but he also knew that humans had something that other species might not have. They had stubbornness. Vecren showed images of previous attempts to colonize Krivara 9. The pictures were disturbing. Broken equipment scattered across red sand. Structures that had been torn apart by the wind. Suits that had been corroded by the atmosphere. Each image told a story of failure and pain. "We need the minerals on this planet," Vecren explained. "They are rare and valuable. We use them to build shields for our ships. Without these minerals, we cannot protect ourselves from certain weapons. But the cost has always been too high. We cannot keep sending people to die on Krivara 9. Jake finally spoke. His voice was calm and steady. Vecren looked at him with an expression that was hard to read. "Because humans are different. You are new to space, but you have already surprised us many times. You solve problems in ways we never think of. You take risks that seem crazy to us, but somehow you survive. We thought maybe you would want to try where others have failed," Lisa whispered to Jake. "This sounds like they are asking us to commit suicide." Jake nodded slightly but kept his eyes on Vecren. "What happened to the last team that went down there?" "The Krothans. Tell me exactly what went wrong." Vecren pulled up more data. They landed in a valley that seemed safe. The first day was difficult but manageable. The second day, the temperature dropped faster than their equipment could handle. Their shelters were not designed for such rapid change. The third day, the local predators found them. The Krothans are excellent fighters, but these creatures were too fast and too many. By the fourth day, their power systems started failing. The atmosphere was eating through their generators. They held on for 2 more days, hoping for improvement, But conditions only got worse. They evacuated on day 6. Jake asked more questions. He wanted to know about the gravity fluctuations, the storm patterns, the composition of the atmosphere, the behavior of the predators. He asked about water sources, mineral deposits, and soil samples. For 2 hours, he questioned Vekrin and the other council members. Lisa took notes on everything. When the meeting finally ended, Vekrin approached Jake directly. "I must be honest with you, Captain Morrison. I do not think you should accept this mission. I have seen too many good people die on that planet. Your species is brave, but bravery is not enough. On Krivara 9, I would prefer you walk away and live rather than die trying to prove something." Jake appreciated the honesty. "How long do we have to decide?" 72 hours, Vekrin replied. "That should give you enough time to review all the data and discuss it with your crew." Jake and Lisa returned to the UCS Horizon. The ship was home to 40 crew members, all experts in their fields. When Jake called them together for a meeting, he could see the curiosity on their faces. They knew something big was coming. He showed them everything. The images of Krivara 9, the data about its dangers, the stories of previous failures. He did not hide anything or make it sound easier than it was. When he finished, the room was silent. Peter Collins, the chief engineer, was the first to speak. "That planet looks meaner than anything we have faced before." Amy Rodriguez, the medical officer, added, "The injury rate will be high. We should expect broken bones, burns, frostbite, and probably worse. I will need to prepare for emergency surgeries." Danny Wright, one of their best pilots, studied the atmospheric data. "Getting down there will be rough. Getting back up might be harder." Helen Carter, the xenobiologist, looked excited despite the danger. "The life forms there must be incredibly adapted. I would love to study them, but they will probably try to eat me first." Kyle Brooks, the security chief, crossed his arms. "We can handle the predators if we are smart about it, but we cannot fight the planet itself. If the environment kills us, weapons will not help." Jake let them talk. He wanted to hear their concerns and their ideas. After an hour of discussion, he asked the most important question. "Should we accept this mission?" The room went quiet again. Then Lisa spoke up. "Every other species has failed. But we are not every other species. Humans are good at surviving impossible situations. It is kind of our specialty." Peter nodded. "We would need to modify our equipment. Standard galactic technology might not work there. We should build things our way." Amy looked worried but determined. "I can keep people alive if they give me a chance. But everyone needs to follow safety protocols exactly." The UCS Horizon moved through space toward Krivara 9 like a tiny metal fish swimming toward a shark. 3 weeks had passed since Jake accepted the mission, and every day brought them closer to the planet that had killed so many others. The crew spent those weeks preparing in ways that would have seemed strange to other species. Peter Collins worked day and night in the engineering bay. He was taking apart standard galactic equipment and rebuilding it with human designs. The atmospheric suits that most species used were too fragile for Krivara 9. Peter stripped them down and reinforced them with materials that were heavier but much stronger. He added extra layers of protection and backup systems for everything. If one system failed, 3 others would take its place. Amy Rodriguez turned the medical bay into something that looked more like an emergency room on Earth. She stocked supplies for every kind of injury she could imagine. Burns from extreme heat, frostbite from extreme cold, broken bones from gravity fluctuations, poisoning from the atmosphere, wounds from predator attacks. She practiced emergency procedures until she could do them in her sleep. She also trained other crew members in basic medical care because she knew she could not be everywhere at once. Helen Carter studied every piece of information about Krivara 9's ecosystem. She watched videos of the predators that lived there. They were called razorbacks by the Crothans who had fought them. The creatures were low to the ground with 6 legs and armor-plated skin. Their teeth could bite through metal, and they hunted in packs. Helen tried to understand their behavior patterns. When did they hunt? What attracted them? What scared them? Knowledge could be the difference between life and death. Danny Wright spent hours in the flight simulator. He programmed it with Krivara 9's atmospheric conditions and practiced landing over and over again. The winds on the planet were violent and unpredictable. The air was thick with particles that could damage engines. A normal landing approach would not work. Danny had to learn how to bring a shuttle down through conditions that would tear most ships apart. Kyle Brooks trained his security team every day. They practiced fighting in high gravity and low gravity. They learned how to move when the ground beneath them was unstable. They studied tactics for dealing with fast-moving pack hunters. Kyle did not want his team to just shoot at everything that moved. He wanted them to be smart and efficient. Ammunition would be limited on Krivara 9. Every shot had to count. Lisa Hayes coordinated everything. She made schedules, checked progress, and solved problems before they became disasters. She also spent time with each crew member, talking to them about their fears and their hopes. Some were excited about the mission. Others were terrified, but hiding it well. Lisa knew that keeping morale high would be just as important as keeping equipment working. Jake walked through the ship every day, watching his crew prepare. He felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. These people trusted him. They had followed him on 17 missions, and he had always brought them home safely. Krivara 9 would be different. He knew some of them might get hurt. He knew the mission might fail. But he also believed in human determination. Other species saw an impossible planet. Humans saw a challenge. When the UCS Horizon finally reached Krivara 9, the crew gathered at the observation windows to see it with their own eyes. The planet looked beautiful and terrible at the same time. Swirling red clouds covered much of the surface. Black mountain ranges rose like broken teeth. Storms, the size of continents, raged across the equator. Even from orbit, they could see the violence of the world below. "It looks angry," someone whispered. Jake heard the comment and smiled slightly. "Then we will have to teach it some manners." The landing team was selected carefully. 12 people would go down first to establish a base camp. The rest would stay on the horizon, providing support and ready to send help if needed. Jake would lead the landing team personally. He would never ask his crew to face something he would not face himself. Lisa would go with him as second in command. Danny would pilot the shuttle. Peter would handle equipment setup. Amy would provide medical support. Helen would study the environment. Kyle would lead security. 6 other crew members with various skills would complete the team. Each person had been chosen because they were the best at what they did and because they could handle extreme stress. The night before the landing, Jake could not sleep. He walked to the observation deck and stared at Krivara 9. The planet seemed to stare back at him, daring him to come down. He thought about all the people who had tried before and failed. Strong warriors, advanced scientists, experienced explorers. All of them had been defeated by this one planet. Lisa found him there an hour before dawn. She stood next to him without saying anything for a while. Finally, she spoke quietly. "Are you having second thoughts?" "Well," Jake shook his head. "No second thoughts. Just first thoughts repeated 100 times. I keep wondering what we are missing. What did everyone else overlook? What will be the thing that tries to kill us?" "Everything will try to kill us," Lisa said with dark humor. "The heat, the cold, the gravity, the air, the animals. We knew that from the start. The question is not what will try to kill us. The question is whether we are tough enough to survive it." "And what do you think?" Jake asked. Lisa looked at him with steady eyes. "I think humans have survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters. We crawled out of caves and built cities. We went from riding horses to flying through space in just a few hundred years. If any species can handle Krivara 9, it is us. We are stubborn enough, crazy enough, and adaptable enough." Jake felt his confidence return. Lisa was right. Humans had always found ways to survive. They would find a way on Krivara 9, too. The landing shuttle was loaded before dawn. Equipment was secured carefully because the trip down would be rough. Everyone double-checked their suits and their gear. Amy made sure every team member had medical supplies. Kyle distributed weapons to those who knew how to use them. Peter verified that all the tools and building materials were properly stored. When everything was ready, the team boarded the shuttle. Jake took one last look at the horizon. The ship would stay in orbit, watching over them. If something went terribly wrong, the horizon could evacuate them. But Jake did not plan to need evacuation. He planned to succeed. Danny sat in the pilot seat and began the startup sequence. The shuttle hummed to life around them. Lisa sat in the co-pilot position, ready to help with navigation and systems monitoring. The rest of the team strapped into their seats and prepared for the worst ride of their lives. UCS Horizon. This is Landing Team 1, Danny said into the radio. We are ready for departure. End quote. The voice of the Horizon's captain came back clear and strong. Copy that, Landing Team 1. You are cleared for departure. Good luck down there. We will be watching. The shuttle detached from the horizon and began its descent toward Krivara 9. For the first few minutes, everything was smooth. They fell through empty space with only the stars around them. Then they hit the outer atmosphere. And the violence began. The shuttle started shaking immediately. Wind grabbed them and tried to throw them off course. Danny fought the controls, making constant adjustments to keep them on the right path. The temperature outside started rising as friction built up on the hull. Warning lights began flashing on the dashboard. Temperature climbing, Lisa called out. Hull integrity holding. They pushed deeper into the atmosphere. The shaking got worse. Equipment rattled in its restraints. The crew held onto their seats and tried to stay calm. Through the windows, they could see the red clouds of Krivara 9 rushing past them. Lightning flashed in the distance, bright enough to hurt their eyes. Turbulence increasing, Danny said through gritted teeth. His hands moved constantly on the controls, fighting to keep the shuttle stable. Sweat ran down his face despite the climate control in his suit. They hit a pocket of severe turbulence that threw the shuttle sideways. Alarms screamed warnings. One of the crew members cried out as her restraints dug into her shoulders. Peter's tool bag broke loose and crashed against the wall. Amy immediately started checking for injuries. We are through the worst of it, Danny announced, though his voice suggested they were not through anything yet. The shuttle was still being thrown around like a toy in a child's tantrum. Lower they went, descending through layers of atmosphere that got thicker and more violent. The hull temperature peaked and then started dropping as they moved through different air layers. The gravity began to fluctuate, making everyone feel heavy one moment and light the next. It was disorienting and nauseating. Finally, after 20 minutes that felt like hours, they broke through the lowest cloud layer. Below them stretched the surface of Krivara 9. Red desert as far as they could see, black mountains in the distance, and winds that kicked up dust. Devils the size of buildings. Danny searched for the landing zone they had selected from orbit. It was a canyon that offered some protection from the worst winds. He guided the shuttle toward it carefully, fighting the crosswinds that tried to push them off course. The ground rushed up to meet them, faster than anyone wanted. The moment the shuttle ramp lowered, Krivara 9 hit them with everything it had. The air that rushed into the shuttle smelled like rust and chemicals. It burned in their throats, even through the filters in their suits. The temperature was already climbing toward dangerous levels, and local noon was still 2 hours away. The gravity felt wrong, pulling at them unevenly like invisible hands, trying to drag them down. Jake was the first to step onto the red soil. His boots sank slightly into sand that felt more like powder. Every breath took effort. The air was thicker than Earth normal, and the filters in his suit worked hard to remove the harmful particles. He could hear the whine of the filtration system in his helmet. "Sound off," he ordered. One by one, the team confirmed they were functioning. Lisa came down the ramp next, followed by Kyle and his security team. They immediately began scanning the area for threats. The canyon walls rose high on both sides, offering some protection from the wind, but also limiting their view. Anything could be hiding in the rocks above them. Peter and his engineering crew started unloading equipment. Everything had to be moved quickly because they did not know how long the current weather conditions would last. Helen set up her scientific instruments, her hands moving fast despite the bulky gloves of her environmental suit. Amy established a medical station inside the shuttle where she could treat injuries in a controlled environment. Danny stayed at the controls, keeping the shuttle ready for emergency takeoff. The engines were still warm from the landing. If they needed to evacuate quickly, he could have them airborne in under 2 minutes. Nobody wanted to think about needing that option, but it was good to know it existed. The first hour went smoothly. Too smoothly. Kyle did not trust it. He had studied enough reports about Kravara 9 to know that the planet did not give anyone a break. If things seemed easy, it meant something bad was coming. He was right. Helen was the first to notice the movement. She was collecting soil samples about 50 meters from the shuttle when she saw something shift in the rocks above her. She froze, her training telling her that sudden movements attracted predators. She spoke carefully into her radio. "Kyle, I have movement. 11 o'clock high. Multiple contacts." Kyle turned smoothly, his weapon ready but not raised. He did not want to provoke an attack if it could be avoided. He saw them now. Shapes moving between the rocks, low to the ground, dark-colored to blend with the black stone. The Razorbacks had found them. "Everyone, stay calm," Jake ordered over the radio. "Back toward the shuttle slowly. No running. Helen, can you make it back?" Helen started moving backward carefully, keeping her eyes on the rocks above. "I think so. They are not attacking yet, just watching." But Kravara 9 was not going to let them off that easy. The temperature suddenly spiked. Heat washed over them like a physical wave. The planet's weird atmospheric conditions created temperature changes that happened in minutes instead of hours. Warning alarms started going off in everyone's suits. "Temperature rising fast," Lisa called out. "Suits compensating, but we are reaching maximum threshold," Peter shouted. "We need shelter now. The equipment will fail in this heat." Jake made a quick decision. "Everyone inside the shuttle. Move." The team started moving faster. Not quite running, but close to it. The Razorbacks in the rocks seemed to sense the urgency. They began moving too, coming down from the heights, circling around to cut off the retreat to the shuttle. Kyle's security team formed a line between the predators and the rest of the crew. "Keep moving," Kyle ordered the others. "We will hold them back." The Razorbacks were getting closer. In the harsh light of Kravara 9's sun, the humans could see them clearly now. They were about the size of large dogs but built low and wide. Their skin was covered in plates that overlapped like armor. Their mouths were filled with teeth designed to tear through tough materials. And there were at least 20 of them. One of the Razorbacks rushed forward, testing the humans. Kyle fired a warning shot that hit the ground in front of it. The creature stopped, but it did not retreat. It made a sound that was something between a hiss and a growl. The other Razorbacks took up the call. The noise was awful. "They are coordinating," Helen said from near the shuttle. "Pack behavior. They are deciding whether we are worth the risk of attacking." Peter got the last of the equipment to the shuttle ramp. "Everyone who is not armed, get inside now." The unarmed crew members scrambled up the ramp. Amy stood at the top, counting heads to make sure everyone made it. The heat was becoming unbearable. The suits were doing their best, but they were designed for space, not for a planet that could cook you alive. The Razorbacks made their decision. They attacked. They came from 3 directions at once, moving fast and low. Kyle and his team opened fire. The weapons they carried were designed to stop large animals. And they worked. The first Razorback took a hit and went down hard. The second was wounded, but kept coming until a second shot stopped it. But there were too many. The creatures were smart enough to use the terrain. They dodged between rocks and attacked from angles that made them hard to hit. One got past the security line and went straight for Lisa. She pulled her sidearm and fired twice. Both shots hit, but the Razorback's armor deflected the first one. The second shot found a weak spot between the plates, and the creature collapsed. Jake fired his weapon at a Razorback that was trying to flank them. Fall back to the shuttle. Fighting retreat. The security team moved backward in good order, firing as they went. The Razorbacks pressed the attack but paid for it. 5 of them were down now. The others were learning that humans were dangerous prey. They started hanging back, circling but not charging. Kyle was the last one up the ramp. As soon as he was inside, Danny raised it and sealed the shuttle. Outside, the Razorbacks paced back and forth, frustrated but not willing to attack the metal shell of the shuttle. Inside, the team collapsed against the walls, breathing hard. The temperature in the shuttle was climbing despite the environmental controls. They had escaped the predators, but now they faced the heat. Peter immediately went to work on the cooling systems. We can handle this temperature for maybe 2 hours. After that, we either need to move or we need to find a way to cool down the shuttle. Amy was checking everyone for injuries. 2 crew members had minor burns where their suits had not quite kept up with the temperature change. One person had twisted an ankle in the rush to get back to the shuttle. Lisa had a bruise on her shoulder from where a Razorback had almost gotten her. Nothing life-threatening, but it was only the first hour on the planet. Jake gathered the team in the main compartment. All right. We learned some important lessons. First, this planet can change from manageable to deadly in seconds. Second, the local wildlife is smart and aggressive. Third, we cannot operate out in the open for long periods. We need better shelter than the shuttle. Helen was studying the data she had collected before the attack. The Razorbacks retreated into caves when the temperature spiked. They know how to survive here. We should do what they do. Find or make shelter underground where the temperature is more stable. Peter nodded. I saw some cave formations in the canyon walls when we were landing. If we can reach one and expand it, we could build a proper base that uses the planet's own protection. Kyle was cleaning his weapon. Getting to those caves means going back outside. And those things will be waiting for us. Kyle. Then we go out ready for them, Jake said. We suit up with full weapons. We move as a unit. And we do not give Krivara 9 any more chances to surprise us. The team rested for an hour while the temperature outside slowly dropped. Peter monitored the external conditions constantly. When the heat finally became manageable again, they prepared to venture out a second time. This attempt was different. The entire team moved together as one group. Kyle's security people formed a perimeter. Everyone carried weapons, even those who were not trained soldiers. Peter had his engineering tools ready to evaluate the caves. Helen had her scientific equipment to test air quality and structural stability. They left the shuttle and moved quickly toward the nearest cave entrance. The Razorbacks were still out there, watching from the rocks, but they did not attack. Maybe they had learned that humans were too dangerous. Maybe they were just waiting for a better opportunity. Either way, Jake was grateful for the breathing room. The cave entrance was narrow but tall. Peter examined it carefully with his instruments. This goes back pretty far. The rock is stable. Temperature inside is 20 degrees cooler than out here. This could work. They entered the cave cautiously. It was dark inside, so they activated the lights on their suits. The cave opened up into a larger chamber about 30 meters in. The ceiling was high enough to stand comfortably. The walls were solid rock that had been shaped by wind and water over millions of years. This is perfect, Peter said. We can seal the entrance, expand the chamber, and build a real base here. It will protect us from the temperature swings and give us a defensible position against the wildlife. Jake looked around the cave. It was not much to look at. Just a hole in the rock on a planet that wanted them dead. But it was a start. It was a plaque. The first night on Crevera 9 almost killed them all. Jake had expected it to be bad. But nothing in the reports prepared them for the reality. As the sun began to set over the red desert, the temperature started dropping. Not gradually like on Earth, but fast like someone had opened a freezer door on the entire planet. Peter watched his instruments with growing alarm. Temperature is falling at 15 degrees per minute. At this rate, we will hit freezing in less than an hour. The team had spent the afternoon setting up emergency shelters inside the cave. They were not fancy. Just prefabricated walls and heating units that were supposed to keep the cold out. The equipment was rated for extreme conditions, but Crevera 9 was redefining what extreme meant. Lisa organized the crew into shifts. Some would sleep, while others monitored the equipment and watched for problems. Everyone was exhausted from the day's work, but nobody complained. They all knew that staying alert could mean the difference between life and death. The temperature continued to plummet. Within an hour, it had dropped 80 degrees. The heating units inside the shelters were running at maximum capacity, struggling to keep up. The walls of the shelters, designed to insulate against space's cold, were barely adequate for Crevera 9's brutal night. Then the wind came. It started as a low howl outside the cave entrance. Within minutes, it became a scream. Wind tore through the canyon, carrying sand that could strip paint from metal. Some of it made it into the cave, despite the barriers they had erected. The sand was sharp enough to scratch the faceplates on their helmets. "Seal the cave entrance completely," Jake ordered. "We cannot let that wind get in here." Peter and his team worked fast to close off the opening. They used materials from the shuttle and rocks from the cave itself. It was hard work in the growing cold. Their suits helped, but the temperature was dropping so fast that the suit heaters could barely keep up. By the time they finished sealing the entrance, 2 crew members were showing early signs of hypothermia. Amy brought them into the warmest shelter and started treatment. She wrapped them in thermal blankets and gave them warm fluids to drink. Their core temperatures had dropped dangerously low, but she caught it in time. Another hour in the cold and they might have been in real trouble. Jake watched Amy work and felt angry at himself. They had only been on the planet for 1 day, and already his crew was getting hurt. This was exactly what he had feared. Crevera 9 was not just dangerous, it was relentless. The planet never stopped trying to kill you. The night got worse. Around midnight by ship time, one of the heating units failed. The temperature in that shelter immediately started dropping. The crew members inside scrambled to move into other shelters, crowding together for warmth. Peter tried to fix the broken unit, but his hands were shaking from the cold, and the repairs required precision. "I need more light," Peter said through chattering teeth. "And my fingers are not working right. This cold is affecting my motor control. My motor. Code. My fingers. I need more light. This cold is affecting my motor control." Kyle held a light for him while Helen assisted with the small parts. They worked together for 20 minutes, their breath forming clouds in the freezing air. Finally, Peter got the unit working again. It sputtered to life and started pumping out heat. The crew members who had been displaced moved back into their shelter gratefully. But the crisis was not over. Another problem emerged around 2 in the morning. One of the crew members, a young man named Chris Baker, started acting strange. He was mumbling about being too hot even though everyone else was freezing. His face was flushed, and his eyes looked unfocused. Amy recognized the symptoms immediately. "He is going into shock. His suit's heating system must have malfunctioned. He has been getting cooked while the rest of us were freezing." She got Chris out of his suit quickly and checked him over. His core temperature was dangerously high. He had burns on his skin where the suit's heating elements had been pressed against him. Amy worked fast, cooling him down carefully while monitoring his vital signs. Too fast, and she could send him into worse shock. Too slow, and the heat damage would get worse. Lisa helped Amy while Jake stood nearby, feeling helpless. This was what command meant. Watching your people suffer and knowing you had put them in this situation. He had accepted this mission, He had brought them to this hell planet. If Chris died, it would be Jake's fault. But Amy was good at her job. She stabilized Chris and got his temperature down to safe levels. He would have painful burns for a while, but he would live. She gave him medication for the pain and made him as comfortable as possible in one of the shelters. "We need to check everyone's suits," Amy said to Jake. "If one malfunctioned, others might too. We cannot afford more failures like this," Jake agreed. He ordered everyone to run diagnostics on their environmental suits. It was a good call. They found 3 more suits with problems. None as bad as Chris's, but all potentially deadly if left unchecked. Peter made repairs using spare parts from the shuttle. The long night continued. Every hour brought a new challenge. The cave walls contracted from the cold, creating stress that made ominous creaking sounds. Frost formed on every surface, despite the heating units. One of the shelters developed a leak that let in freezing air until it was patched. Someone's water supply froze solid and burst, requiring emergency repairs. Through it all, the wind outside never stopped. It howled like a living thing, angry at being denied entry to the cave. Sand and small rocks pelted the barriers they had erected at the entrance. The noise was constant and wearing on everyone's nerves. Helen made an interesting discovery during the night. She was monitoring seismic activity and noticed something odd. The Razorbacks have gone deep underground. I am picking up their heat signatures in cave systems below us. They know how to survive the night. They do not try to fight it. They just go somewhere. The cold cannot reach them. The sign? Jake thought about that. Humans always tried to fight nature with technology. They built heating units and shelters and tried to maintain their comfort level. But maybe that was the wrong approach for Krivara 9. Maybe they needed to be more like the Razorbacks. Accept what the planet was doing and work with it instead of against it. He shared this thought with Lisa. She nodded slowly. We are thinking like space travelers. We are used to ships where we control the environment completely. But this is not a ship. This is a planet. We cannot control it. We can only adapt to it. Tomorrow we start digging deeper, Jake decided. We find those cave systems that go down into the rock, where the temperature is stable, where we can be protected from the surface conditions. Lisa agreed. We use the planet's own protection, instead of trying to build our own. As dawn approached, the temperature finally started to rise again. The brutal night was ending. The crew gathered in the main shelter to count their losses. Chris was injured, but stable. 2 others had minor frostbite. Everyone was exhausted. The heating units had burned through more power than expected. Several pieces of equipment had failed and would need to be replaced, but they were alive. All of them. Krivara 9 had thrown everything it had at them for one night, and the humans had survived. Jake stood at the cave entrance as Peter and his team removed the barriers they had erected. Outside, the sun was rising over the red desert. The wind had died down to a strong breeze. The temperature was climbing rapidly toward the day's heat. In the distance, they could see the Razorbacks emerging from their underground shelters, ready to hunt in the daylight. The planet looked the same as it had yesterday. Harsh, beautiful, and deadly. Nothing had changed out there. But something had changed inside the cave. The humans were different now. They had faced Krivara 9's night and survived it. They knew what the planet could do. And they knew they could handle it. Danny climbed up from the shuttle where he had spent the night monitoring systems. How bad was it up here? No, bad enough, Jake said. But we made it through. How is the shuttle? Temperature fluctuations played hell with some of the systems. But nothing I cannot fix. The hull is solid. Engines are good. We can evacuate, if we need to. Jake shook his head. We are not evacuating. We are going deeper. Into the caves. We are going to do what the locals do, and use the planet's own protection. Peter joined them, looking tired, but determined. I was thinking the same thing during the night. The surface is too variable. But deep underground, the temperature should be stable. The rock will insulate us from the extremes. How long to set up a deep base? Jake asked. Peter thought about it. With the equipment we have? Maybe a week, if everything goes perfectly. 2 weeks more realistically. We will need to excavate, reinforce, and install all our systems. And we will have to do it while dealing with the surface conditions and the wildlife. Then we better get started, Jake said. He called the crew together for a meeting. Everyone looked rough. Tired eyes, faces marked with stress, bodies moving slowly from exhaustion. But Jake saw something else too. He saw determination. He saw people who had been tested and had not broken. Last night was the hardest night any of us has ever experienced. Jake began. Some of you were injured. All of you were pushed to your limits. Krivara 9 tried its best to kill us, and it failed. We are still here. He paused to let that sink in. But we cannot keep fighting the planet the way we did last night. We were using space technology on a planet that does not care about our technology. We need to change our approach. We need to go deeper into the rock where the conditions are stable. We need to build a base that uses Krivara 9's own geology to protect us. The next 2 weeks were the hardest of Jake's life. Every single day brought new challenges that would have broken most people. But the crew of the UCS Horizon was not most people. They were humans. And humans had a talent for surviving things that should kill them. Peter led the excavation effort into the deeper caves. They used drilling equipment designed for mining asteroids, modified to work in Krivara 9's harsh conditions. The work was slow and dangerous. The rock was harder than expected, full of minerals that dulled their drill bits quickly. They had to stop frequently to replace equipment and let the machinery cool down. The deeper they went, the more stable the temperature became. At 50 meters below the surface, the wild swings from burning heat to freezing cold were reduced to manageable variations. At 100 meters, the temperature held almost steady. This was where they would build their permanent base. But getting to 100 meters down meant working through surface conditions that tried to kill them every day. The team worked in shifts, rotating between the deep excavation and surface duties. When the temperature spiked during the day, they retreated to the deeper sections, where it was cooler. When the brutal cold of night came, they went down to where the rock's natural insulation protected them. Kyle's security team learned to coexist with the Razorbacks. The predators were always around, watching and waiting. But they had learned that attacking humans was costly. The dead members of their pack from the first day had taught them a hard lesson. Now they kept their distance, hunting easier prey in the canyon. An uneasy truce developed. The humans did not shoot unless threatened. The Razorbacks did not attack unless desperate. Helen made breakthrough discoveries about the planet's ecosystem. She learned that the Razorbacks were not the only dangerous creatures on Krivara 9. There were burrowing things that came out at night, blind, but incredibly sensitive to vibration. There were flying creatures that rode the thermal currents during the day, with beaks sharp enough to pierce environmental suits. There were even microscopic organisms in the soil that tried to break down anything organic. But Helen also learned how the local life survived. Everything on Krivara 9 went underground when conditions got bad. Everything had multiple ways to regulate temperature. Everything was tougher than it looked. The planet had created an ecosystem of survivors, and humans were learning to be part of it. Amy's medical bay moved deeper into the caves as the excavation progressed. She treated injuries every single day. Broken bones from falls in the unstable gravity, burns from equipment failures, and a venti out of ling scene, frostbite from extended exposure to the night cold, cuts and bruises from falling rocks. One crew member was bitten by a small creature they had not identified yet. Amy had to figure out treatment on the fly because there was no medical database for Krivara 9's wildlife. Despite the constant injuries, Amy kept everyone functional. She became an expert at field medicine under impossible conditions. When supplies ran low, she improvised. When equipment failed, she made do with whatever was available. She was exhausted all the time, but she never stopped working. Lisa coordinated everything from a command center they established at the 50-meter depth. She managed schedules, tracked supplies, and kept communication open with the UCS Horizon in orbit. The ship sent down supply drops every few days, but they had to be careful. Each landing and takeoff stressed the shuttle's systems. Danny could only make so many trips before the shuttle would need major maintenance. The Galactic Council was watching their progress with amazement. Reports from the Horizon showed humans doing what should be impossible. They were not just surviving on Krivara 9. They were building. They were adapting. They were thriving in a way that no other species had managed. On day 12, they reached the 100-meter depth and found something unexpected: a natural cave system that extended deep into the planet's crust. The caves were huge, some chambers large enough to fit the entire shuttle inside. The temperature was stable. The air was breathable with minimal filtering. And the caves were empty of predators. It was perfect. Peter walked through the caves with his engineering team, amazed at what they had found. "We do not have to dig anymore. Nature already did the work for us. We just need to seal off the dangerous sections and install our equipment." Jake explored the caves with him. The rock formations were beautiful in the light of their portable lamps. Crystals grew from the ceiling, formed over millions of years. Underground streams provided fresh water that just needed basic filtration. The caves even had natural ventilation from shafts that went up to the surface. "This changes everything," Jake said. "We can build a real base here. Not just a survival shelter, but a permanent settlement." Over the next week, the team transformed the caves into a functional base. They sealed the entrance from the surface with airlocks that protected against the temperature extremes. They installed power generators in isolated chambers where the noise would not disturb living areas. They set up water purification systems next to the underground streams. They created living quarters, work areas, and storage facilities. The base grew organically, using the cave system's natural layout instead of fighting against it. Humans had always been good at adapting to their environment. On Earth, they had lived in deserts, jungles, mountains, and frozen wastelands. They had learned to work with nature instead of always trying to dominate it. On Krivara 9, they were doing the same thing. One of the most important discoveries came from Helen's research. She found that certain local plants had roots that went deep underground, following the cave systems. These plants had evolved to survive Krivara 9's extremes by staying mostly below ground. Their root systems could filter toxins from the soil and produce oxygen as a byproduct. Helen proposed an experiment. What if they cultivated these plants inside the base? They could help purify the air and reduce the strain on their mechanical life support systems. It was a risky idea. Bringing alien plants into their living space could introduce unknown dangers. But Jake approved the experiment. If it worked, it would make the base more self-sufficient. The plant cultivation was a success. Within days, the air quality in the base improved. The plants thrived in the stable cave environment, growing faster than Helen had predicted. They even produced small fruits that, after careful testing, turned out to be edible for humans. Not delicious, but nutritious and safe. By the end of the 3rd week, the base was functional. Not finished, but livable. The crew could work without constantly fighting for survival. They had heat when they needed it, cool air when the surface was burning, and protection from the brutal nights. The base had room to grow as more equipment and personnel arrived from orbit. Jake stood in the main cavern that served as their central hub and felt something he had not felt in weeks. Hope. Not just hope for survival, but hope for success. They had done it. They had found a way to live on Krivara 9. The Galactic Council sent a formal message of congratulations. No species had lasted 3 weeks on Krivara 9 before. The humans had not only survived, they had established a permanent foothold. The message ended with a request. Would the humans share their methods? Other species wanted to know how they had succeeded where everyone else had failed. Jake discussed it with his senior staff. Lisa thought they should share everything. It would build goodwill with the council and help other species. Peter worried about giving away their advantages. What if another species used their methods to compete for resources? Kyle did not care either way. He was just glad to still be alive. Helen had an interesting perspective. We succeeded because we thought like humans. We adapted instead of trying to force our way. We learned from the local life instead of fighting it. We worked together instead of giving up when things got hard. Other species can copy our techniques, but they cannot copy being human. Our stubbornness is our real advantage. Jake decided to share their basic methods but keep some of the details private. He sent a report to the council explaining the deep cave approach, the importance of working with the planet's natural rhythms, and the value of studying local life for survival strategies. But he did not give away everything. Some knowledge was earned through hard experience, and the humans had paid for it with blood and sweat. Life in the deep base settled into a routine. The crew worked in shifts, mining the valuable minerals that had brought them to Krivara 9 inches the first place. The minerals were everything the council had hoped for, and more. Rich deposits of rare elements that were essential for advanced technology. The humans were careful to mine sustainably, taking only what they needed and leaving the cave structure intact. They also continued to explore. The cave systems went deeper than anyone had expected. Some tunnels led to chambers a kilometer below the surface. Down there, the conditions were completely stable. No temperature fluctuations at all. No gravity anomalies. Just solid rock and darkness. It was the safest place on the entire planet. Danny made regular trips between the surface and orbit, bringing supplies down and taking mineral samples up. The shuttle was holding up better than expected, but it was showing wear from the harsh conditions. Peter scheduled maintenance cycles and kept the shuttle in good condition. They could not afford to lose their connection to the horizon. Amy noticed something interesting in her medical records. The crew's health was improving. The constant physical demands of life on Krivara 9 were making everyone stronger. The high gravity was building muscle and bone density. The need to stay alert was sharpening everyone's mental reflexes. They were adapting to the planet at a biological level. 1 month after landing, Jake called a meeting of the entire crew. 40 people gathered in the main cavern, sitting on rocks and makeshift benches. They looked different than they had a month ago. Tougher, leaner, more confident. They had been tested by the deadliest planet in the galaxy, and they had passed the test. "We have accomplished something remarkable," Jake began. "We have done what the Galactic Council said was impossible. We have built a permanent base on Krivara 9. We have survived conditions that killed members of stronger, more advanced species. We have proven that humans belong among the stars." He paused and looked at each person. 3 months had passed since Jake Morrison and his crew first landed on Krivara 9. The base that had started as a desperate survival shelter had grown into something that amazed everyone who saw it. The underground complex now housed 60 people, with room for more. New crew members arrived every 2 weeks, brought down by Danny's shuttle runs or by new ships that the council had authorized. The mining operation was exceeding all expectations. The rare minerals flowed from Krivara 9 to the galaxy at a steady rate. The council had projected it would take 5 years to gather enough material for their needs. At the current rate, the humans would finish in 2 years. They worked harder and more efficiently than any species the council had ever hired. But the base was more than just a mining operation. It had become a research station, a proving ground, and a symbol. Scientists from across the galaxy requested permission to visit and study how humans had succeeded. The Galactic Council was granting those requests carefully, sending small groups of observers to learn from the human methods. Jake stood in the main operations center, watching screens that showed different parts of the base. The cave system had been mapped completely now. They had found chambers that went down 3 kilometers into Krivara 9's crust. Some of those deep chambers held geological formations that existed nowhere else in the known galaxy. Helen's science team was studying them carefully. Lisa walked up beside him with a tablet in her hand. We have another request from the council. They want to send a delegation of Crothans to visit the base. The same species that failed here 5 years ago. They want to understand how we succeeded where they did not. Jake considered it. The Crothans were proud warriors. Coming back to the planet that had defeated them would be difficult for them, but if they were willing to learn, he was willing to teach. Approve it. Schedule them for next month. That will give us time to prepare a proper presentation. The Crothan delegation arrived 4 weeks later. There were 5 of them, led by a veteran warrior named Gorath, who had been part of the original failed mission. They landed at the surface entrance to the base, emerging from their shuttle into Krivara 9's brutal heat. Jake met them there personally, along with Lisa and Kyle. Gorath was impressive. He stood over 2 meters tall with natural armor plating on his skin. His species had evolved on a heavy gravity world with a hostile environment. They were born warriors and survivors, but even Gorath looked nervous as he stepped onto Krivara 9's red soil. Captain Morrison, Gorath said, in heavily accented but clear English. Thank you for allowing us to visit. This planet holds painful memories for my people. Jake shook his hand, feeling the incredible strength in the Crothan's grip. I read your reports from 5 years ago. You faced terrible conditions and made the right decision to evacuate. There is no shame in surviving. Gorath nodded slowly. But you did not evacuate. You stayed. You built something permanent. We need to understand how. Quote, Jake led them into the base through the airlocks that protected against the surface temperature. As they descended into the caves, he explained the human approach. We started by accepting that we could not fight the planet directly. Krivara 9 is too strong. Instead, we learned from the local life. Everything here goes underground when conditions get bad, so we went underground too. The Crothans listened carefully as Jake showed them the base. They saw the living quarters built into natural cave chambers. They observed the mining operations that used the cave system's stability to operate continuously. They studied the plant cultivation areas where local vegetation helped purify the air. They were impressed by the efficiency and the cleverness of the design. But Gorath still looked puzzled. We considered underground operations during our mission, but we could not excavate fast enough before the conditions overwhelmed us. How did you manage it? Peter, who had joined the tour, answered that question. We did not try to excavate while dealing with surface conditions. We found natural caves that already existed and modified them. The planet did most of the work over millions of years. We just had to be smart enough to use what was already here. One of the other Crothans asked, But how did you survive long enough to find these caves? The first night alone should have killed you. Amy stepped forward to answer. It almost did. We had injuries and equipment failures. But we helped each other. When someone was in trouble, the whole team supported them. We shared resources, shared warmth, shared hope. No one survived alone. We all survived together. Gorath was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that surprised everyone. I think I understand now. We Crothans are strong individually. Each warrior is trained to be self-sufficient. But on Krivara 9, individual strength was not enough. You humans are weaker individually, but you work together better than any species I have known. Your collective strength defeated the planet. Jake had not thought about it that way. But Gorath was right. Humans were not the strongest, fastest, or toughest species, but they were exceptional at cooperation. They built teams that were greater than the sum of their parts. On a planet like Krivara 9, that made all the difference. The Crothan delegation spent 3 days at the base. They studied everything and asked hundreds of questions. When they finally prepared to leave, Gorath approached Jake privately. My people failed here because we tried to conquer this planet with strength, Gorath said. You succeeded because you adapted to it with intelligence and cooperation. We have much to learn from humans. I will recommend that the Council hire human advisors for all future hostile world colonization efforts. After the Crothans left, more delegations came. The Velcrin, who had first warned Jake about Krivara 9, visited and admitted he had been wrong about human capabilities. A group of scientists from a species that lived in toxic atmospheres came to study how the base's air purification worked. Traders came to negotiate contracts for the minerals. Even tourists came, wealthy beings who wanted to say they had visited the deadliest planet in the galaxy. The base became famous. Stories spread across the galaxy about the humans who refused to quit. Songs were written about their stubbornness. The Galactic Council used Krivara 9 as an example in their training programs for new explorers. The human settlement became a symbol of determination and adaptability. But for the crew living there, life continued with its daily challenges. Krivara 9 never stopped being dangerous. The surface conditions never became friendly. The predators never stopped hunting. Equipment still failed. Injuries still happened. The planet tested them every single day. Jake had grown to respect Krivara 9. Not love it, but respect it. The planet was honest in its hostility. It did not pretend to be safe. It did not hide its dangers. It simply existed in all its deadly glory. And it was up to visitors to adapt or die. The humans had chosen to adapt. One evening, Jake took a walk through the deepest parts of the base. Down here, 3 kilometers below the surface, the silence was complete. No wind, no temperature fluctuations, just solid rock and the quiet hum of human machinery. He found Helen in one of the research chambers, studying a crystal formation that glowed faintly in the dark. Beautiful, is it not? Helen said without looking up. Jake agreed. I never expected to find beauty on a death world. Helen smiled. Every world has beauty, if you look for it. Krivara 9 is harsh, but it has created amazing things. These crystals form under extreme pressure and temperature changes. They could not exist anywhere else. The planet that tries so hard to kill us also creates wonders. Jake thought about that. It was a good reminder that nothing was purely good or purely evil. Krivara 9 was dangerous, but it was also valuable and unique. The challenge was not to destroy the planet or conquer it, but to find a way to coexist with it. Back in the operations center, Lisa was coordinating with the UCS Horizon. The ship was preparing to return to Earth, its mission complete. A new ship would take its place, bringing fresh supplies and crew rotations. Some of the original 40 crew members would go home. Others, including Jake, had chosen to stay. You could go back, Lisa said to Jake. You have done your job. The base is established and running smoothly. Someone else could take over. Jake shook his head. This is my responsibility. I brought these people here. I will see this mission through to the end. Besides, Krivara 9 has not finished teaching me yet. I want to learn everything this planet has to offer. Lisa was staying too. So were Peter, Amy, Helen, Danny, and Kyle. Most of the original crew had decided to remain. They had bonded with this deadly world in a way that was hard to explain to people who had not been here. They had earned their place on Krivara 9, and they were not ready to leave. The base continued to grow. New sections were opened up as exploration revealed more cave systems. The mining operations expanded carefully, always respecting the planet's geology. The research stations made discoveries that advanced multiple fields of science. The human presence on Krivara 9 became permanent and stable. 5 months after landing, Jake received a message from the Galactic Council. It was marked as priority communication. He opened it in his private quarters, curious about what could be so important. The message was from the Council's highest authority, a being so old and wise that most species considered it semi-divine. The message was brief but profound. It thanked the humans for their service on Krivara 9. It acknowledged that humanity had proven itself worthy of respect in the galactic community, and it contained an offer. The Council wanted humans to lead colonization efforts on other hostile worlds. There were dozens of planets like Krivara, 9, throughout the galaxy. Rich in resources, but too dangerous for most species to settle. The Council believed humans had the unique combination of intelligence, adaptability, and stubbornness needed to succeed on these worlds. Jake read the offer 3 times, thinking about what it meant. This was not just a job offer. This was recognition that humanity had something special to contribute to the galaxy. This was an invitation to become pioneers on the most challenging frontiers of known space. He called a meeting of his senior staff to discuss it. They gathered in the conference chamber that had been carved from solid rock, sitting around a table made from Krivara 9's native stone. "They are asking us to do Krivara 9 over and over again," Peter said. "Other death worlds. Other impossible challenges. It is an honor," Lisa pointed out. "They are saying humans are the best at this kind of work." Amy looked concerned. "But at what cost? We have been lucky here. No one died. But our luck might not hold on the next planet." Kyle was philosophical. "Humans have always gone to the dangerous places. Our ancestors crossed oceans without knowing what was on the other side. They climbed mountains because they were there. They went to space when it was barely possible. This is just the next step," Helen agreed. "And think of what we could learn. Every hostile world has unique life, unique geology, unique challenges. We could advance science by centuries." Danny added his perspective. "I signed up to explore. To go where others cannot or will not go. This offer is exactly what I want to do with my life." Jake listened to all of them, but he already knew his answer. He had known it the moment he read the offer. Humans were built for this. Not because they were stronger or smarter than other species, but because they refused to give up, because they adapted, because they worked together, because they were stubborn enough to succeed where others failed. He sent his response to the Council that night. Yes, humans would accept the offer. They would lead colonization efforts on hostile worlds throughout the galaxy. They would bring their determination, their creativity, and their refusal to quit. They would show the universe that humanity had earned its place among the stars. Word of the decision spread quickly through the base. Some crew members were excited about future challenges. Others were content to stay on Krivara 9 and continue the work here. Everyone understood that humanity had just taken a major step forward in the galactic community. Jake stood at the surface entrance one last time that day, looking out at Krivara 9's brutal landscape. The sun was setting, painting the red desert in shades of orange and purple. A storm was forming in the distance. The temperature was already starting to drop. Soon, the brutal night would come, just like it had every night for billions of years. But deep below his feet, humans were safe and warm. They were working, laughing, living. They had taken the deadliest planet in the galaxy and made it home. They had set foot on Krivara 9 and refused to fall. And now they would do it again. And again. On world after world. Because that is what humans did. They went to the impossible places and made them possible. They faced the greatest challenges and found ways to overcome them. They refused to accept defeat. Jake smiled as he turned to go back inside. Krivara 9 had taught humanity an important lesson, not about survival, though they had learned that too. The real lesson was about who humans were and what they could accomplish when they decided to try. They were explorers. They were survivors. They were builders. They were stubborn, creative, adaptable, and determined, and they were ready to show the entire galaxy what humans could do when they refused to fall. But this is just the beginning. We are not here to just survive. We are here to succeed. We are going to turn this base into a thriving settlement. We are going to mine these minerals and help the galaxy. We are going to study this planet and learn its secrets. And we are going to show everyone that when humans decide to do something, nothing can stop us. The crew responded with cheers that echoed through the cave. They had come to Krivara 9 as explorers and colonists. They had become survivors and pioneers. They had learned that the deadliest planet in the galaxy was not so deadly if you were smart enough, tough enough, and stubborn enough. Outside, on the surface, Krivara 9 continued its assault. The temperature soared during the day and plunged at night. Storms raged across the deserts. Predators hunted in the canyons. The planet had not changed. It was still the same deadly world it had always been. But deep below the surface, in caves carved by time and modified by human ingenuity, a new chapter was being written. Humanity had set foot on the galaxy's deadliest planet and refused to fall. And in refusing to fall, they had shown the universe what humans could do when they decided to stay. The crew listened carefully. Jake could see them, thinking about what he was proposing. "It will be hard work," he continued. "Dangerous work. We will be digging and building while dealing with the heat, the cold, the gravity fluctuations, and the predators. But if we succeed, we will have something that can stand against anything this planet throws at us. We will have proven that humans can survive on Krivara 9. Lisa stood up. "I say we do it. We did not come here to give up after one bad night. We came here to build something that lasts." One by one, the other crew members voiced their agreement. Even Chris, lying injured on a medical cot, raised his hand in support. They were battered and exhausted. But they were not defeated. Jake felt pride swell in his chest. This was humanity at its best. Knocked down but getting back up. Hurt but still fighting. Faced with impossible odds but refusing to quit. "All right then," he said. "Let us show Krivara 9 what humans can do when they decide to stay. Where humans could survive. And if they could survive, they could build. And if they could build, they could succeed." "All right," Jake said. "Let us get to work. We have a base to build." Outside the cave, Krivara 9 continued its assault. The wind picked up. The temperature started to climb again. A storm formed in the distance. Lightning flashing inside dark clouds. The Razorbacks prowled around the canyon, waiting for their chance. The planet was doing everything it could to kill these newcomers. But inside the cave, humans were doing what humans do best. They were adapting. They were building. They were refusing to give up. Krivara 9 had defeated every other species that tried to claim it, but it had never faced humans before. And humans did not know how to quit. "Brace for landing," Danny warned. The shuttle hit the ground hard. The landing gear absorbed most of the impact. But everyone still felt the jolt through their bones. They bounced once, twice, then settled. The engines whined as Danny powered them down. For a moment, nobody moved. They had made it. They were on Krivara 9. Jake unbuckled his restraints and stood up. His legs felt shaky, but he forced them to be steady. "Everybody all right?" The crew called out confirmations. A few bruises and one bloody nose, but nothing serious. Amy was already treating the minor injuries. Outside the shuttle windows, they could see the red landscape of the deadliest planet in the galaxy. "Welcome to hell," Kyle said softly. Jake looked at his team. "Then, let us show hell what humans can do." One by one, the crew members agreed. They knew the risks, but they also knew what humans were capable of when pushed to their limits. Jake felt proud of his team. They were not crazy or suicidal. They were explorers who understood that the greatest achievements came from the greatest challenges. Jake spent the next 72 hours planning. He reviewed every piece of data 100 times. He designed new protocols and equipment modifications. He created backup plans for the backup plans. When he returned to the Galactic Council, he had his answer ready. Vekrin looked surprised when Jake accepted the mission. "You understand that we cannot guarantee your safety? If things go wrong, rescue might not be possible?" Jake nodded. We understand. We will bring our own rescue capabilities. And we will not need them. Because we are not planning to fail. The other council members whispered among themselves. Some looked impressed. Others looked sad, as if they were already mourning the humans who would die on Kravara 9. But Jake was not thinking about failure. He was thinking about how humans throughout history had done impossible things simply because they refused to give up.